Man, you guys are still polite, seriously. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys a countdown. When I get to 0, you guys have to jump up and down and go crazy saying thank you to the MC. So ready? 3, 2, 1, 0. Alright, you know, I wonder why I ask you guys to jump and scream, because every time I hear the girls screaming, my ears are like, because I can't feel sure. Alrighty, who's had a good day today? Raise your hand if you had a good day today. Cool, I had the privilege today of walking around, crawling around in mud and planting trees. Who wishes they had my day? That's so much. Alrighty. And perhaps at this point, we need to settle down just a little bit. So I'm just going to keep walking around the stage until we get a little hush.
You would do very bad. I didn't do that.
Alright guys, I'm going to be really annoying.
No. When there's someone on the stage, particularly when it's me at this point in the evening, or one of the other guys who presents the gospel message, the idea is you listen.
That's right, kids.
You guys have caught on to it.
Oh crap, oh crap. Lift up your leg.
It's going to wait a little bit longer, just for the last people who don't understand etiquette and manners.
I'm so sorry.
Cool. Hey, we're 3rd week into our Why God series, and tonight we're doing Why God in Times of Trouble. And just to preface things before I begin, we're looking at trouble, and for a whole bunch of us, we've experienced different things, right? And so as I get into this topic, I'm not trying to be trite or to joke around. We're dealing with some serious stuff. And I want you guys to be mature about this and be mindful of those sitting next to you. I want you as you listen tonight to lock into what I'm saying to you and lock into what God's saying to you. And if you are finding that nothing's appealing to you, then I want you to sit there and just fall asleep on your seat and tune out. Do not distract anyone. Because we're dealing with serious stuff tonight. So you lock into what I'm saying, or you keep to yourself with this little segment. Do we have a deal?
No.
Yeah, then it's a little quiet. But anyway, so let us begin. Everyone here should know by now that I grew up in South Africa when I was a young kid, right? And growing up in South Africa, it was common practice for families to own a personal gun. Most families owned a gun in order for protection. And so when I was 7 years old, I made a friend by the name of Wesley. He was an awesome dude. He had shaggy blonde hair. Why that makes him awesome, I do not know. He was good at sports, and he had really, really cool toys. And toys obviously count when you're 7 years old. Well, in 1994, before some of you were born, Wesley's dad went over to have a few drinks and a chat with his neighbour. Now this is common practice, or this was common practice between the two of them. They often hang out, they often talk together, and they often have drinks. But at this particular time, somewhere between sitting down and talking, and somewhere between sitting down and talking and having a few drinks, they got really, really angry with each other and they began to argue. And Wesley's dad's neighbour pulled out a gun, pointed it at his dad, pulled the trigger and shot him. And in 1994, at the age of 7, Wesley and his younger sister were left fatherless. And the question I have was, or is, where was God? Where was God? Hey, many of you know that my very first, or one of my first, student jobs was working at a chocolate factory. I worked at a factory called Chocolate Sensations. It was the local chocolate factory. It was owned by a lady named Sue, and she used to attend our local church. Now, Chocolate Sensations started off as a really small company, and over 10 years, Chocolate Sensations grew until it became the major distributor of chocolate to the Woolworths franchise in New Zealand. And so what used to happen when you go to work at Chocolate Sensations was they used to have these huge vats of chocolate, these big round containers, and they'd be constantly hot, and they'd be constantly swirling around. And from each vat of chocolate, the chocolate would travel down these conveyor belts into these molds. And once they're in the molds, they'd be shaken up and moved down the conveyor belts into these coolers. And once they're in the coolers, they moved from there and they get packaged and then they got shipped off to all around the country and people ate that chocolate. Well, one day there's a chocolate worker, right, at the factory, and they're working along and they come to this vat and they dropped in a steel mold into the vat of chocolate. And so what the worker decided to do, rather than wasting thousands of dollars of chocolate, the worker decided to play a game of fishing. And so decided to fish out all the steel shards from this chocolate. And when the worker was satisfied that all the chocolate had been all the metal had been removed from the chocolate, they continued the production process, and the chocolate went down into the molds, into the freezers. It was packaged, and it was sent around to all the stores all around the nation. A few weeks later, someone had some chocolate from Chocolate Sensations. They found some steel in it. And so every single chocolate bar that had gone out around that period of time had to be called back. Hundreds and thousands of dollars of produce was called back. Chocolate Sensations was all over the news. It was in the media. It was all over the papers saying, if you've got this product, return it for a full refund. A combination of the bad publicity, slow sales, and the cost of recalling all the chocolate proved too much. And in 2003, Sue had spent her life savings and all her time building this factory, declared bankruptcy, and Chocolate Sensations was closed down. Where was God in this? Where was God in this? Hey, the 21st century, that's the century we're in now, began unlike other centuries. See, the turn of the 21st century marked a new era for humanity, one that we're still working through. See, on a Tuesday morning, most people began their day just like any other Tuesday. They woke up, they had breakfast, they had a shower, a shave if they were a man, maybe a shave if they were a woman. They went for their morning jogs, they went for their walks. Some people drove to work, others caught aeroplanes to work. But at approximately 8:50 a.m. American Standard Eastern Time, American Airlines Flight Number 11, a Boeing 767 carrying 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants and 2 pilots, heading from Boston to Los Angeles, crashed into the World Trade Center. Where was God? At approximately 9 a.m, a second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, also a Boeing 767 heading from Boston to Los Angeles, this time with 56 passengers, 7 crew and 2 pilots, crashed into the second tower of the World Trade Center. Where was God? At 9:38, American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757, with 58 passengers, 4 flight attendants and again 2 pilots, heading from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, crashed into the Pentagon. Where was God? At 10:09 a.m. American Eastern Standard Time, the World Trade Center's southernmost tower collapsed. There are still people inside it. At 10:30 a.m., the northern tower of the World Trade Center collapsed. There were still people inside it. Where was God? And finally, at 10:42 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93, a Boeing 757 with 45 people on board, heading from New Jersey to San Francisco, crashed into Somerset County. Where was God? Where was God? 9/11/2001 started as any other day starts. People got up and they were about to just do their normal everyday things. But the events of that day dramatically changed and shaped the 21st century. Where was God between 8:50 a.m. and 10:42 a.m.? Where was God? You see, as I speak to you right now, somewhere around the world, I know this, I don't know this person, but somewhere around the world, there's a little girl. She's at home. She's sick. She's weak. She's dehydrated. She's lying on the ground. There's absolutely no one with her and no one there to help her. She's just taken her last breath. Her heart's just stopped. And she's another person who's just died. The death that needs to happen. Where was God? Where was God? Where was God in all of these events? Where was God? You see, tonight we're looking at why God in times of trouble. And I realize for many of you, no matter what I say, this is a sensitive topic. And no matter what I say, no matter what I do, nothing I do or say can prove or disprove or take away the pain you've experienced. And there's no way that I can say anything that can convince you that God cares. You see, for many of you believe that seeing is believing. And so you realize that when you get out of this place, you see a world that is hurting. You hear the cries of desperate people. And let's just face it, if there is a God, He's not a very good God because He's not doing a very good job. He wasn't there for the defenseless. And He wasn't there for you the last time you were hurting. Where was God when you needed Him most? So why should you turn to God in times of trouble? Why should